Am I the only one that's noticed that Rovio doesn't really make games anymore? Flashback 5 years and they were cutting edge. Angry Birds was the new Tetris with a dash of lemmings. It effortlessly combined Chaplin-esque physical comedy with a dead-on physics engine to create a cultural landmark in league with Dilbert and Harry Potter in terms of bookstore accessory table occupying relevance. And in the words of the narrator from the Second Renaissance, for a time it was good. Angry Birds was that rare wink and a nod between nerds and non-nerds that allowed us weirdness-minded outsiders to bask in the glow of mainstream acceptance, and it felt good. Sure, it lacked the intellectual depth of Peanuts or Calvin and Hobbes, but it was one of those rare moments where an egg-headed thing became a flat-headed thing, and the two warring factions were able to be as one, a people united by the heroic vision of a society reborn in the image of creativity and the imagination. In those years, it seemed as if Rovio could do no wrong. Angry Birds Classic confounded Americans with a jocular fervor not seen since the Rubik's Cube. Angry Birds Star Wars came out, and it was an ethereal freefall into the realms of warm-hearted nostalgia. Bad Piggies, my personal favorite of the Rovio stable, was an opportunity to create whacked-out Rube Goldberg machines that somehow operated both off of realistic physics and the wacky logic of cartoon absurdism. Everything they touched turned to golden eggs. But it was not to last. The American diet of deep fat-fried sugar slop and nail polish fumes seeped into that wonderfully symbiotic union of nerds and common folk, and soon the people at large had a newfound obsession, sorting small icons into groups of threes. The same dopamine release that could be triggered by launching an avian demolition team into the sides of a building could be equally and more easily triggered by sorting. Let's swallow a bitter pill here, people. Candy Crush Saga is not a puzzle game. Noticing that 3 or more identical images are next to one another isn't a puzzle, it's just pattern recognition. And it's not even a challenge when you can purchase little power-ups that allow you to win instantly. And so, the Rovio fad wore off. Who needed to think when you could mindlessly sort? When I was but a lad, I attended my earliest years of school at High Meadows Elementary in Roswell, Georgia. Going to school on a farm was a wonderful experience. For example, I can recall my teachers trying to wrangle a sheep that got loose in our classroom. But one thing I dreaded was math afternoon. That was when we would come in from recess and find that the room had been arranged into a series of stations which involved different activities based around some sort of mathematical process. My favorite station was the sorting pile. That was where the teachers would take all the toys they couldn't arrange into something that involved actual math and dump them into a massive pile of fuck it, then tell us to arrange them by some common standard. Here's a bunch of round things. Here's a bunch of things I can fit up my nose. And over there is a bunch of things I'm going to use to tunnel my way out of here. I sorted. The point being that that station was a cop-out, and that's why I liked it. Because of all the stations in Math Afternoon, it was the one thing closest to not doing math. So what did Rovio do when Candy Crush Saga knocked them out of the top slot? Well, simply put, they started jerry-rigging the new Angry Birds games with so many pay-to-win power-ups that it turned into this Pavlovian bastardization of its former glory, so much so that new installments in the Angry Birds franchise involve little more than sliding my greasy thumb across the bacteria-encrusted screen and watching my 3 coveted stars erupt before me. Nowhere has this been more blatant than in the release of Angry Birds Action. I have no idea what in the hell is going on, but I've already beaten several levels. There's minimal interaction followed by a lot of colors flashing on the screen. It's kind of like having an entire victory celebration every 2 feet of a drag race. Rovio is now in the business of throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks, and absent a decent array of puzzles that can only be solved through intellect, not pay-to-win tricks, they are only going to be able to cash in on their former glory for so long. Once in a blue moon, the popular and the intellectual converge, and we have these beautiful moments as a culture where we finally seem to be on the right track. The first moon landing was one. The popularity of Angry Birds was another, albeit much less significant. My prediction is that after the last desperate Hail Mary pass that is this new movie they have coming out, they'll fade out of whatever relevance they had left and occupy a space next to Catch-Up on the shelf of clickbaiting time wasters. But it doesn't have to be this way, Rovio. Take a long look at games like Device 6 and Yearwalk and put your own spin on that instead of just copying the Candy Crush formula. Can you imagine what brilliance could emerge? Just don't get Shakira involved. Whatever, wherever, you're not meant to be together. If you enjoyed this commentary, please help me continue to bring you more content by making a donation to patreon.com/JordanOwen42. Your contribution will help me turn this channel into a hub of libertarian pop culture discussion and current events commentary. Thank you for listening, and as always, please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already.